Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 183. A Lesson on Mediumship. After dinner, Klein engaged in small talk before reclining on the sofa. He picked up the recently delivered AWA Evening News and started leisurely reading. Benson wore a bitter expression as he sat opposite his sister. In front of him was the dining table, which had been wiped clean by Bella. On it was grammar books, classic literature, accountancy notes, and other materials. In front of Melissa were her notes and stationery, including but not limited to pens, paper, rulers, compasses, etc. It's like I've been taken some 10 years back. Back then, I was still a student at the church's Sunday school, Benson complained, but he continued to study with his head down. That's not too bad. This scene makes me feel the achievement of being a parent. Klein smiled and said, Knowledge can change one's destiny, and diligence will result in glory. I made up the latter half of that saying. I wonder if Roselle has said that before. He lampooned in his heart. The room quickly became quiet except for the sound of pens scratching across pages or of books being flipped. Bella had finished doing the dishes and tidied up the kitchen before returning to her room on the first floor, a small room that was formerly the guest room. Klein sipped on his side black tea as he read the newspaper, occasionally engaging in small talk with his siblings. It was relaxing. Suddenly, the gas lamps in the living room and dining room turned dark at the same time, as if they had run out of fuel. Benson and Melissa looked up towards the lamps, in an attempt to figure out the cause. Klein also looked towards the lamps. At this moment, he felt something touch his arm. He was the only living person in the living room, but something had touched his arm. His hair stood on end. Klein retracted his arm and turned to look over. He saw 5 thin, pale fingers growing on the tip of a tongue. Underneath them was an irregular row of sharp teeth. Klein instinctively reached for his pockets. Within them were the requiem charms and slumber charms. But he caught a glimpse of a neatly folded piece of paper in the finger's grasp. A letter. A messenger! Klein heaved a sigh of relief. At that moment, the 5 pale fingers prodded his arm again. Klein saw Melissa about to stand up and check on the gas lamp. He reached out with his left hand and grabbed the letter, then he quickly retracted his arm and hid the letter under the stack of newspapers on the table. He then saw the fingers, tongue, and the irregular row of sharp teeth fade away and disappear from the corner of his eyes. With a thought, Klein tapped his left molar and silently activated his spirit vision. He once again saw the 5 abnormally thin fingers. He saw the long red tongue adorned with sharp, white teeth. He saw them retracting back into the transparent face on the ground. A second later, the face disappeared completely. The lights in the living room and dining room were restored back to normal. Strange. Melissa pouted, finding no faults with the lamps even after a serious check. Why is the lady in our house responsible for such things, while the men watched from the side? Klein shook his head and deactivated his spirit vision. When spirits were willing to be seen and had the corresponding abilities, even an ordinary person could spot them. What happened just now was an example. After discussing the problem with the gas lamps, the Moretti siblings became quiet once again. Benson and Melissa once again delved into the ocean of knowledge. Klein used the newspaper as a cover and unfolded the letter with one hand. He placed the paper between the newspapers and started reading the reply from Spirit Guide Daily. I have to emphasize again, I prefer the title of Spirit Medium. I'm going to give you a positive response regarding what you asked. Yes, mediumship rituals can also be used on living beings, not just living humans. But this is troublesome and poses some level of danger. The souls left behind by the dead are pure. They have few impurities or chaotic thoughts. We can communicate with them, asking them questions and receiving answers without any barriers. Of course, you can use the method of dream divination to directly receive images from them. But that cannot be replicated with living humans. The subject still has a will and would fight against unprotected communication between souls. Klein's lips twitched when he read the letter. He confirmed that it was Daly herself who wrote this letter. Unprotected communication. That really is the way she speaks. Klein returned to the letter after taking a quick glance at his siblings. We only have two methods when faced with such a situation. First, we can use our powerful spirituality and sophisticated mediumship rituals to triumph over the will of the other person, engaging in a barbaric method of communication. Second, we can use medication to make the other party relax. What I use the most are the Amantha essence and Eye of the Spirit medication. I'm sure that you still have a lingering impression of those. After reaching the stage of channeling the soul, you must take note that you're also in a spiritual state, unlike when you're communicating with the souls left behind by the dead. In simpler terms, your spirituality is entering the spirituality world of the other party. Take note, a professional spirit medium wouldn't lack the means of protecting themselves under such a state. But you cannot do that. You would not be able to learn or use the techniques that I know of even if I explained them to you. So you have to maintain a certain level of lucidity and rational thought. Only through this method can you fight back against the torrents of the other party's random and chaotic thoughts before arriving before his spirit and establishing communication. At this point, you'll be communicating at the level of the body of heart and mind. At this stage, you have two options. One is to use a technique to forcefully read the memories of the other party, but you have to be very careful, for you cannot be sure if the things you're reading are the things that you want to know. If you indiscriminately receive a large amount of memories from a person, it's very likely that your soul would collapse. Furthermore, it will cause severe damage to your target's soul, sometimes even destroying them completely. Unless you're a professional spirit medium, I do not suggest using this method. The second option is to gently communicate with the other party's body of heart and mind. No matter how you entered, whether it be through violence or medication, the target will definitely be in a groggy state. They would generally not be able to lie, just like you couldn't. No, you cannot recall what happened to you. Although I know you've definitely forgotten about it. Sorry, Madam Daly, I was very awake back then. Klein chortled inwardly as he lowered his gaze and read the rest of the letter. Such communication can allow you to obtain real answers, but they won't necessarily all be the truth. You should understand what I mean. As long as you read the news, you must have heard Emperor Rosel's famous quote. I don't remember the actual quote, but the essence of the quote is that what one says shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. In short, a spirit might not remember everything because a lot of memories are in one's subconscious or collectively be in the subconscious. Oh, I shouldn't mention that. Dunn calls it the evil theories of the psychology alchemists. Thus, you must be able to guide the soul and be good at designing your questions, do you understand? The corresponding techniques include. These are all under normal circumstances. What should we pay attention to when we're trying to communicate with the soul of a beyonder who has gone insane? It's the same, maintaining your lucidity. You must not fall into a daze at all. This is because a beyonder's spirituality is very potent and their spirit is filled with chaotic thoughts. Let me give an example. An ordinary person's consciousness is an island. The subconscious is the portion of the sea beneath the island. The collective subconscious is the surrounding sea. The sky belongs to the spirit world. As for a beyonder, his island might have a controllable active volcano. A lunatic's island might have a volcano that can erupt at any time. It would quake the foundations and pollute the sea. When you come into unprotected contact with the spirit of an insane person, his chaotic thoughts might infect you, just like how polluted water in the sea would flow outward, spreading further. Yes, channeling his spirit under such conditions is like linking your sea to his. Thus, you need to pay close attention to this pollution. A few examples are when a spirit medium is careless when doing similar things and didn't use any protection. After that, they can develop mental problems similar to that of the target. Under normal circumstances, mental diseases are not contagious. But in the domain of mysticism, in the world of channeling spirits, they can indeed be contagious. Maintaining your lucidity and not being affected by the chaotic thoughts of the target are things that you must pay attention to. Following those would be the guided questions, which can be used to effectively communicate with an insane person. If you wish to try this, I suggest applying a serenity agent before doing so. The corresponding formula is available behind Tingen City's Chinese Gate. There's also the formulated product. It can be effective in helping you maintain rational thought during the process. Of course, you can also get done to apply for help from the Backland Diocese. I'm very willing to see the spirituality state of an insane sequence 7 psychiatrist. Lucidity and rational thought. That's my expertise. I maintained lucidity and rational thought even when my soul was being channeled. Of course, I'm not someone who lets confidence get to my head. I'll still apply for the Serenity Agent, a Mantha extract, and Eye of the Spirit medication. Klein heaved a sigh of relief, a little eager to make the attempt. He put down his newspaper and stood up. He then entered the bathroom and ignited the letter with his spirituality before tossing the ashes into the toilet bowl and flushing them. That night, Klein once again tried the ritual for summoning himself and brought the flaring sun charm back to the physical world and into his room. He also didn't receive Mr. Azek's letter even though he had expected a swift reply. Perhaps he needed some time to recall the knowledge, or perhaps he's not free to give a reply for now. Or perhaps he's worried that he would interrupt my sleep. Klein dispelled the wall of spirituality, as he speculated. He made his way to the bed. The following day, Tuesday morning, Klein entered the Blackthorn Security Company and knocked on the door to the captain's office as usual.